or open your eyes, it doesn't matter. But let's pray together. Heavenly Father, our hearts are overjoyed to be in your house of prayer. We are thankful for who you are and what you're doing in our lives. You are God who pursues us. You are everywhere. You are in control of our events and our lives. Everything happens according to your design. So as we embark upon this Mission Rally weekend, may we prepare our hearts and our minds to receive your word to be spoken through your servant, Missionary Shim. Lord Jesus, you are our Lord and Savior. Thank you for your obedience that cost your life to save us. Your sacrifice paved the way for us to be united with you, the Father. Jesus, you are worthy of our praise. You are a wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. Yes, you are the Lamb of God that takes the sin of the world away. Holy Spirit, we welcome you to this place and into our heart. We acknowledge that without your drawing us to you, we will still be lost. As we set apart this time for you, may you use our brother Bob Shim as your mouthpiece to speak to us. And when you speak to us tonight, may we be both encouraged and also challenged by your word. May tonight's message be our spiritual bread, and may we have a feast that is going to help us to be spiritually fit. May our soul be filled with your spirit overflowing. This weekend we have come to hear about how you are moving all over the world to bring the lost to Christ. Whether it is close or far, the mission is really about going to people to share the love of Christ with others so that they too can become the children of God. We want to ask you for a favor of drawing people who are actually closest to us, our family members, to yourself. May our lives and may the love that we share with them become the gospel lived out so that our beloveds can also share the joy of salvation and be united with you. We have 75 plus house churches and their missionaries all over the globe who are on the front line of mission. Sometimes it gets hard out there away from the sending churches. We pray for our missionaries to be encouraged by none other than you. May your spirit comfort them. We ask you to reign in our lives as you are truly the King of Kings. We want to be used as your hands and feet for your kingdom furtherance. May you be honored by our lives as we go out from here. We are thankful for our praise team who ushered us into your presence. May all that we do tonight be honoring to you. We give the rest of tonight to you. Use it for your glory. We pray that our hearts will be a good soil for the message that will be given to us. May we be open to hear the calling from you. And furthermore, may we make the adjustment that we need to make to go on to obedience. Our desire is that your love for the world will be felt tonight. May your power to change our lives through mission be magnified above all else. May we, as members of this New Life Fellowship, be challenged to follow your calling wherever it may lead, whether it's local or global. We pray in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Good evening. Caught myself. Hey, welcome everybody. This is the third annual missions rally here at New Life Fellowship. I just want to welcome you here. For those I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, my name is Caleb Richards, the leader of missions here at this church. And all the kids, stand up. If you're a kid in this service here, stand up and give us a shout real quick. Woo! All right. I'm excited for the privilege of, I just want to bring to your attention in your bulletin we have 9 mission trips that God has opened up for us this year as possibilities for us to serve in this year. They're beginning in really quickly in April. We're going to try to go to Amman, Jordan, and so since that's such a quick one, if you would sign up in the next 2 weeks. We need to make that team first. And the way you're going to sign up is on our church website, nlfhouston.org. Under missions, under short term, there's going to be a list of all the trips in case you lose this handout. And below there is going to have an apply button. Now, if you are interested for more information, this is not a commitment yet, but if you want to find out more information about this trip, please sign up. You just want to know how much it's going to cost, what those dates are, whether they change, and if you have any questions, we'll be in contact with you through that sign up. Other ones, we have, on top of these 9 mission trips, we have 4 that we've never been to before. God's opened up this other opportunity. So all you old new lifers who've been on mission trips before, experienced short-termers, long-termers, whatever it is, we need your leadership. So if you would consider signing up for those new trips to help lead us into those areas, please consider prayerfully to do that. And the way we get all these new mission trips is we have 75 house churches. You guys are in communication with your missionaries quite frequently, and we encourage you to ask them, would it be okay if our house church come and visit, see what is going on where you're serving. So please, that is how we are. God's leading us into this area. So consider asking your missionary if that would be a possibility. 2020 is going to be right here around the corner, and so we need more trips to go to next year, and we would love to send your house church to visit your house church missionary. Before we get started here, there's going to be some testimonies, some short-term trips, and some videos. So right now we're going to watch the short-term trip to Yucatan, which was a new trip last year. And after that, Janet, who went on the trip, will give a testimony. Thank you.
I see the work of your hands, galaxies spinning a heavenly dance. Oh God, all that you are is so overwhelming. And I hear the sound of your voice. All at once it's a gentle and thundering noise. Oh God, all that you are is so overwhelming. I delight myself in you, captivated by your beauty. I'm overwhelmed by you. And God, I run into your arms, unashamed because of mercy. I'm overwhelmed by you. I know.
Hey guys, did y'all do a good job? Yeah. Did y'all do a good job dancing? Yeah. You guys did a wonderful job praising today. Go team, go. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
You've done is so overwhelming. I delight myself in you, in the glory of your presence. I'm overwhelmed by you. And God, I run into your arms.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Chang, and my husband Don Chang, and I've been attending New Life since 2009. During the missions rally in February of last year, I signed up to go on short-term missions in Calcachén and San Antonio Tzotzil in the Yucatan state of Mexico. My thoughtful husband decided that he and our children, Sophie, who is 7, and Joshua, who is 4, would join me on my first mission trip to support me, thus making it our first family mission trip. I didn't really know what to expect, and I had a few fears and doubts throughout the year before the trip. It didn't help that the news of the drug cartel violence and other safety concerns in Mexico were all over the news last year. So I questioned whether our decision to bring the children on this trip to an untouristy, unknown area of Mexico was wise. I wasn't sure what types of people we would be spending time with, and I had no idea where our family, including our 2 small children, would sleep that night. I remember Don telling me that it couldn't be worse than the Roca Blanca mission trips where up in the mountains there were fly-filled holes in the ground for toilets. God knows our family is more suited for glamping and not camping because we are hardly the physically active type, so I was grateful to hear that they had basic amenities like toilets and running water. Preparing for the trip was more casual in the beginning, but once we got closer to the departure date, our group started meeting on a weekly basis and even met Pastor Kyle over FaceTime, who is the main missionary we were going there to support. He let us know we would largely be ministering to elementary age children and middle school age kids that were considered high risk that came from broken homes and many who had moms working in the prostitution industry. We knew there was a Christmas party that we would attend and help out with, and New Life was providing the financial support to buy Christmas gifts for the children of the Academy and the small village of San Antonio Tzotzil. Our mission team of 10 adults and 6 children started practicing singing and dancing to Spanish versions of VBS songs when we would meet and also discuss what crafts, games, and skits we would do. We started to get to know each other better, and our children bonded in the NLF playground while the adults met to discuss the details of the mission trip. Before we knew it, December 15th arrived, and we flew into Mexico and retrieved all our bags and supplies we needed for VBS with that incident. Upon meeting Pastor Kyle, Caitlin Kim, and Tio Pastel, also known as Uncle Cake, I immediately felt grateful that they picked us up personally and felt relieved of their assurance of safety to where we were headed, which was about 3 hours away in Calcachén. On the next day, Pastor Kyle and Caitlin Kim took us to see the Mayan ruins to learn about the local culture, and afterwards took us to a famous cenote in the area to swim. Before swimming in the cenote, we were all given an opportunity to zip line across it. I would have never thought that our whole family, including our 4- and 7-year-old, would take turns ziplining over what seemed like a 150-foot drop over water. It was a fun day of bonding and a great way to ease us into the long hours serving to come. Pastor Kyle, a former U.S. Marine, is what Michael Chung will most likely look like when he turns 50. He shared with us that he wanted to change people's perception of missions. He thought all too often when people think of mission trips, they focus on suffering and difficulty. He believed that while there can be suffering and difficulty in missions, focusing on these aspects prevent many people from becoming missionaries and living out God's calling on their lives. Therefore, he thought it was important for short-term missionaries to spend at least a part of the first trip to a place to get to know and enjoy the area, its people and culture, and start building some relationships and see how a longer-term missionary lives there joyfully so that they can naturally catch the vision that God may have for them there. Whether the vision is for multiple short-term mission trips over several years or return for a longer-term mission trip to build and invest in relationships with the people in the area over the years. Over the next few days, we spent time in San Antonio Tzotzil getting to know the people of the 400-people village and the 60 or so children supported by Academy Nathanael. As I mentioned earlier, these were children from surrounding areas with broken or low-resource family situations who were supported by the Mexican government to live and eat in a government-funded dormitory in San Antonio Tzotzil during the week and went home to their respective towns over the weekend. Academy Nathanael is currently run by Caitlin Kim, a meek but openly loving and affectionate 23-year-old recent college graduate who returned to San Antonio after previous shorter-term mission trips to serve 1 year with Pastor Kyle and his wife. Without Academy Nathanael, the children living in dormitories would just go to school and be served meals 5 days a week without much love, attention, supervision, and care from adults during the week. We started our days at 6 a.m. with daily morning devotionals and prayer as a group. We visited the local elementary school to provide some English lessons and play games with the children, as well as host VBS for a couple of days at the academy with singing, dancing, crafts, and more games. We helped wrap nearly 200 gifts for the children of the academy, as well as the children of the village that the missionaries thoughtfully purchased for each child. These gifts were given out at the annual Academy Christmas party, where our New Life team provided entertainment with singing, dancing, and a skit that shared the gospel, as well as a photo booth and face painting. Lastly, the New Life team members participated in a homestay one night with certain families in the village that had close relationships with our missionaries. It was humbling for our family to be invited to sleep in the only bedroom in a house for a family of 4, while the host family slept in hammocks strung across their common room space. When our family left Mexico with the New Life mission team to return to the U.S., we were truly sad to leave and felt like we left a part of our heart in San Antonio, Sutzil. Many of us have caught the vision Pastor Kyle wanted us to catch for the Yucatan and are already looking forward to going back there. It was an amazing week and true blessing to witness what God has been doing in San Antonio, Sutzil. The fruit of the long-term missionaries' efforts and investments into this community for the past 10 years was obvious to many of us, especially in the loving and open way the children interacted with and responded to the missionaries. There's so much infectious love and joy there, and I believe it has a lot to do with the missionaries who show their love for Jesus in the way they love others, big, selfless, fun, lavish, uncalculating ways. Witnessing this, I was also personally convicted and challenged in the way I love others, especially as we learn more about Pastor Kyle's life story. His parents gave him up for adoption when he was 4, although they were from a wealthy family in Korea, because they were going through a divorce and wanted to erase both the marriage and the child. That resulted in Pastor Kyle being adopted into an American family with a volatile adopted mother and 6 other children, and he later ran away from his adoptive family when he was 15. Pastor Kyle shared with us how he struggled with feelings of resentment and abandonment for many years until he finally surrendered his life to Christ 17 years ago in his mid-30s. I was amazed to see how God could fully heal someone with that kind of background, with all kinds of hurts, insecurities, and resentments, to love so big, vulnerably, and selflessly in a Christ-like manner and make an impact for God's kingdom. Pastor Kyle's wife inspired me as well, as she married her husband in faith when she believed God had called her to be his wife. And when their marriage was on the rocks 1 year in, she prayed and fasted for 9 days for Pastor Kyle, which resulted in him surrendering his life to Christ. Since then, she stood by her husband through all the ups and downs through their lives as missionaries, even when their sending church dropped their support and they were down to only $20 in their bank account. In summary, I'm extremely thankful that I had the opportunity to go and witness God's love for the people in the Yucatan state of Mexico, and I pray many here tonight will have an opportunity to go either to San Antonio, Sutzil, or other short-term missions to meet amazing servants of God and experience God's love for all nations. Thank you.
Break it.
there's like 4 more seconds of the video, but that's okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Chang, and this is my wife, Cindy. And we are part of Ankara House Church. That's right. They're right over there. I had the amazing opportunity going on last year's short-term mission trip to Chiang Mai, Thailand. We went to go work with our long-term team that's already there. We went with Chando, who was our team leader, Abraham Na, and Cindy and I. And I came into this trip with a lot of my own expectations. My previous missions experience was also in Thailand, but I went with my previous church, and on that trip we did a lot of manual labor. There was mixing cement, building a fence. We taught English in like remote mountain villages, and we stayed up really late at night, like adjusting our curriculum and planning for the next day. So I kind of went into this mission trip with the mentality of give, suffer, collapse, and die. As we met weekly at Chan's house to plan, quickly found out that number one, Chando loves fried chicken. We had fried chicken like every single week. And I also found out that the main purpose of this trip is actually to support and to encourage the long-term team that's there. So that is the Kim family, the True family, and Elizabeth and Daniel. I felt kind of unprepared for this. What did encouraging the team look like? What did it entail? Do we just hang out with them? And it turns out that, that's kind of part of it, but there's so much more than just that. We were there to spiritually and physically give them support. We helped lighten their load by teaching cooking classes, helping to put together the photo contest banquet that you guys all saw. It was the biggest one so far. We also threw a Thanksgiving party with traditional American dishes like turkey and mac and cheese. But most importantly, we got to experience and be a part of their house church ministry. We could really see that God was working through house churches in Thailand. The way the Thai students were sharing so openly and willing to pray and listen to the Word of God, and even though they come from Buddhist families, really solidified for me the fact that they were all God's children, and God loves them all and has a plan for each of them. We may have been there to serve the team, but in the end, I felt so blessed to just have been able to experience what they do in and day out. And I really feel like, personally, I was refreshed and poured into by just experiencing what they do daily. And that was just reaching out to the students on a daily basis, whether it was as simple as playing a game of ping pong with them or taking them out to dinner. They also are learning a language and a culture that's not their own, and they left everything behind, all their comforts in the States, to go where God called them. And I believe that the purpose of short-term trips are to do your part and to serve the community wherever you go, but ultimately it opens your eyes to the amazing work that God is doing around the world. So yes, we did have fun on the trip, and we did work hard, but what I'll remember and what I'll take away is really how God is working through those people who are dedicated, steadfast, and above all else, willing. My encouragement to all of you is to make yourselves available to go on a short-term mission trip, wherever it may be, just to experience what God is doing around the world, and it may just change your life.
Hi, my name is Cindy, and this is my third time going to Chiang Mai with New Life. The 2 previous times were 2-month-long summer trips during my college years at Rice. And this time was very special to me because 2 of my good friends, Elizabeth and Daniel, they're singles, have recently joined the long-term team. And also, I got married, and Luke was coming with me. Elizabeth is my best friend, and I've shepherded together with Daniel in a Rice House Church for 2 years. So visiting them and seeing how much they've grown was really special to me. And if you met Elizabeth, you'd know that she's very introverted. She's kind of quiet at first. but I saw her intentionally stepping out of her comfort zone and reaching out to unbelievers and creating a lot of relationships with the ties. And Daniel, who I always saw as like a younger brother, he was handling the finances of the group. He learned how to play guitar and lead praise and became very advanced in his Thai language. Actually, when we were there, he was taking a proficiency exam, and he did really well. So I definitely saw that God was there, not only working within the ties, but also stretching and growing Daniel and Elizabeth and the rest of the team. So Luke mentioned that our purpose there was to encourage the team, and they're amazing, but we can definitely see that they struggle. They struggle with depression, with loneliness, and they struggle in their marriages and their relationships. They have frustrations with their house church members who are inconsistent, house church members who have been there for a long time and still haven't changed or accepted, members who date and then break up, right? Not too different from what we experience. But just being there, for us to just be there, spend time with them, and for us to understand their language, to understand house church and the struggles that come with it, was a huge encouragement to them. There isn't really much that we can actually do during that short time, but I strongly encourage you to consider just being there and showing up, because your presence alone would really encourage and revive these missionaries. And we have the presence of Jesus in our lives, and when we go to a place that is lacking that, we will shine, and the presence of God will shine through us. And it'll be like a breath of fresh air for these missionaries, and especially college students. I grew up in a small church without any missions opportunities, and who knows where you'll be after you graduate. So it's never going to be a convenient time. And I hope that you will take advantage of the many trips that are available and take advantage of your breaks. Thank you.
In all things, I've seen a glimpse of your heart. A billion years, still I'll be singing. How can I praise you enough? How can I praise you enough? You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing but to your name we lift up praise. Not to us, but to your name.
Hello, how are you? It's good. For those who don't know me, my name is Mark, and I don't belong to a house church here. But if you look carefully in the video, there was a little Vietnamese bloke with black hair, speak Vietnamese perfectly. That was me in there. But I've come up here to share with you my experience from the other side of the spectrum, because you have heard of people who come from New Life to serve in different countries. But I'm on the other side. I'm the one who hosts mission teams. And I got involved with the House of Grace, or the Company of Grace, for about 10 years. And the Company of Grace is a ministry that has a vocational training center for people with disability. And the aim is to support and to give them a better future, education, English, and all that kind of things. But when I was working there, I was thinking that I was helping these people, but this ministry actually helping me. I got saved through that ministry. And then later on, in 2015, I got an opportunity to go to Australia to study at a Bible college in Sydney, hence my Australian accent. Sorry. During that time, I always have the hope to go back to serve my people in Vietnam, because I know the language, I know the culture, and I know how to get around, all that kind of things. But I don't know where. I don't know why. I don't know how, all that kind of thing. So lots of prayers and things like that. But in 2016, after I hosted a team from Houston, I went up to Hanoi. It's a capital city of Vietnam. And I went up, and normally when I travel, I had a backpack with me where I keep my license, my credit cards, my money, my camera, and all that kind of thing. So that when you need something, you kind of know where you take it out. But one day in Hanoi, I left my backpack at a bus station. And here's a travel tip. When you keep your things in your backpack, when you live somewhere, make sure the backpack is with you. Because when you come back, it's not going to be there. And that's exactly what happened to my backpack. So I went back to the bus station where I dropped it, or I left it. It wasn't there. So I was stateless in my own country. I couldn't prove who I was. I couldn't prove my name is such and such, and I'm from such and such. I couldn't prove it. And in Vietnam, if you don't have any kind of ID, you can't get anywhere. You can't check into your hotel. You can't get on a bus. You can't get onto a plane. It's quite a humble experience, really, when you're in that kind of situation. You know, like over here or in Australia, I can just draw my card out and get money and all that kind of thing. I couldn't. So I thought to myself, well, Hanoi is not the place. This must be the sign from God that stay away from this place. This place is such a dark place. People take advantage of other people. So I went back to my hotel and I said, look, I haven't got anything, like, can I get in? He said, no, you have to go to a police station and report to the policeman, and hopefully they give you some kind of piece of paper for you to continue your travel. I said, oh, okay. So I went back to a police station and tried to report to the guy of what happened to me and what happened to my backpack. And, you know, he said, oh, okay, well, we'll do a report for you. And I was sitting on my table and doing my report. I was angry. I was angry with God. You know, God, I give up everything. I'm willing to go everywhere you set me. Why on earth are you doing this to me? Because it's such a big headache. And then as I was doing my report, I saw a little lady, Vietnamese lady, with a little baby boy. They all stormed right through the police gate. And she was crying, the baby was crying, everyone was crying. And then she started talking and telling her story. And of course, when you're crying, you can't understand what she's saying. And the poor old police person turned around and said to me, do you know what to do with this? I said, I'm not married. You are. You should know how to handle the ladies who are crying. So I was like, oh, okay. So he came out, took a glass of water, came back, offered to the lady, and, trying to calm the lady down. And then the ladies kind of calmed down, and then she started telling her story. She was from one of the mountains. Hanoi is surrounded all the mountains around. And she was one of the tribes. And she arrived in Hanoi because her little baby boy had a little heart disease. And the local hospital couldn't treat it. So they referred her down to Hanoi to go to a bigger hospital where they could treat it. So she said, oh, okay, we'll come down, but I haven't got money to pay for it. So she's been selling ducks and chickens and rice and whatnot for the last 6 months to save up, to pay for the fee. And so she arrived in Hanoi with all this money and paperwork and clothing, be here for a long haul. And she got 2 plastic bags. As she was walking around Hanoi with her 2 plastic bags, this lady, no, it wasn't a lady, there was another guy on a motorbike kind of pulled over and started talking to her. Oh, where you from, what you doing here, and all that kind of thing. And the lady explained, I was like, oh, city people, talking to me, how kind. Like, I'd like to go to this hospital. I said, oh, okay, I know where this hospital is. I'll take you there, free of charge, don't worry. What you do, hop on my motorbike with your bags, and I'll take you there. And the lady said, oh, great. So she did. And what happened, the next thing was, she put her plastic bags on his motorbike, and guess what? He took off with all of her belongings. And I was sitting there listening to the story and got angry. I was like, oh, how dare you doing this to the lady? Like, Hanoi, surely not my place. And as soon as it happened, it's almost like a slap in my face. And I heard this little voice whispering, these are the people that I have died. These are the people that my body was broken for, and they don't know me. And this is where I want you to be. This is where I want you to be, to share my love to these people. And if you look at the statistic of Hanoi, 26 million people, and less than 1% who know Jesus. So there are people from their birth to their death who haven't got a chance to hear about the gospel of who Jesus is. So this is the place where I want you to be. I'm like, oh, thanks. That's exciting. And then I went up to the mountains. I visited a couple of villages and things. And I went up there and I saw lots of women working on the streets, on the fields, in the markets and all that kind of thing. And I asked my tour guide, where's all the men? I can't see all the men. And I said, oh, the tribal people up here, if you're a man, your job is to eat, to drink, to sleep, and to make baby. And if you're a woman, guess what? You've got to do the rest. And that's not the reason why I go back there. But I just want to go back and do something for that kind of community. Share God's love. But I don't know how. And, because I've been hosting New Life Fellowship teams and people from New Life, and I got sold to the concept of health church. So I'm planning to go back to Hanoi the second half of the year and hopefully be able to implement health church. But I'm not going back by myself. Of course, God is there, but I'm going back with my now fiancé. He's part of New Life. So, New Life, I strongly encourage you to go on the mission field and see what's happening out there, just how you can join in with God and serve other people. And maybe you might be able to meet your future fiancé. You never know. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Lim again. I'd like to introduce the guest speaker for the weekend. This is Bob Shim. He is our missionary. Yes. I can go through the bio, but it probably will bore you. Okay. All right. Well, he was actually born in Korea, and his parents immigrated to Brazil in early 70s. And there he learned about God. His parents and his family initially were not believers, but there at the immigrant community, they came to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior. But because his mom was a nurse, they were able to come here to start a new life. And at age around 6, is that right? Somehow, he didn't know what mission was all about, but he just remembers being called to go and somehow share the love of Christ with those who don't know. And that's how the story began. And when he came to the United States, his whole life was propelled into that calling. And so he studied hard. He was not a slacker. So he did his undergraduate at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, and then went to UVA at Charlottesville for his medical school, and then he did his residency in internal medicine at Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois. He then served as attending at Evanston Northwestern Hospital for about 7 years. He actually then was called to go and initially served in Kyrgyzstan in a village, city called Narin. And he served there for 7 years. It's a remote village. It's not in the capital, Bishkek. And it's about 50,000 people. And so he actually knows quite a few Kyrgyz people, I guess. Like, you remember Johan and David Moon, who were ricers? I don't know if rice communities people know, but they were there. And then in 2009 and until now, he has been in Chiang Mai, Thailand, northern part of Thailand. But actually, I heard of him before I met him. What happened was I started dating Suzanne in 2002. And I just remember my mother-in-law going to him as a patient. And I didn't know that he had gone to the mission field. But sometime later, our missionary that we were supporting for a long time came off the field. His name is Robert Moore, who actually is important for Center Foundation, where our team served as a long-term team. And he was called back to Canada to be a senior pastor at Quebec, part of Canada. And so we had no choice. According to the policy of the church, we couldn't support somebody who's off the field. So I didn't know who to go to. And then I heard my brother-in-law go to Umfang to do some cleft palate repair. I said, oh, maybe I could support this guy. So I just kind of reached out to him and wrote an email, and he was a little bit confused at first because Paul Lim and my name, we have same last name. Who is this imposter? So he checked us out, when he was back in 2017, and we met him in person in May 2017. And then the last thing he said was, we asked him, how can we better support you? And he said, come. Little did I know it would take 32 hours to get to where he works. It takes literally 32 hours. But that's what we did this past January, this last month. And so here is Bob. I give him to you. He is our missionary. And
thank you. Good evening, New Life. It is a privilege and an honor to be with you, actually for the next 3 days, I guess. One of the things that we really miss when we, while living overseas, is worshiping in our own language. So thank you so much for that time of worship, and also all the testimonies that were shared by all the short-term teams. Since I'm going to be with you for the next 3 nights, there's some people that I want to recognize and thank. And first of all, I want to thank Pastor Eric and Caleb for extending this invitation for me to come speak. Thank you. When they first emailed me a couple of months ago asking me to speak, I was a little bit confused because, they really just met me once, about a year and a half ago, and they never heard me speak. So I thought, man, they're really trusting. And in fact, probably right now they're like wondering, what have we done? But it is true. I'm not a pastor. I'm certainly not a preacher. But God has given me a story to tell. Amen. Just like He has given you. So I do want to share that with you. And also, there's another group of people that I want to shout out is the West Highland House Church, which I think is sitting right here. Wow. Okay. It's a rowdy group. But I want to thank you for adopting us as missionaries, for really being an extension of God's support, God's care, God's generosity to us, to allow us to do what we do. So thank you so much. The third group that I want to recognize is the 2018 Umpang medical team. Are y'all here? Wave if you're here. Wow, okay. It's weird seeing you guys here, not in scrubs and out in the jungle, right? That's really weird. But I want to actually show some slides. And hopefully the Umpang team will get a chance to, share a little bit and present their testimonies as well. But we did indeed, or they did indeed travel 32 hours. And even after they landed, they had to drive 3 hours and negotiate 1,219 curves up a mountain to get to this small town that sits on a finger of Burma or Myanmar that sticks into Thailand. And it's predominantly a refugee area. 50% of the people who live in this area are Burmese refugees that have come into Thailand to escape the fighting in Burma. But this is kind of what we experienced. We got to worship with some local believers who are from Corinne. There's Hemin sharing his testimony. And rest of the time, we held clinics in villages actually inside the Burmese border. Again, it's predominantly refugee population that don't have access to health care. So there's Dr. David and Dr. John and Dr. Ray examining patients. And because we partner with a Thai government hospital that serves this area, we got to go into the hospital and do some surgeries. And these are some slides from there. Anyway, I just wanted to show some slides. Hopefully they'll get a chance to share in more detail. I do want to give a brief introduction. This is since this is my first night. By the way, that's the longest introduction I've ever had to speaking. So I don't think I have any more introduction to say, but my wife Grace and I, we have served overseas now almost to the date. We were commissioned in 2003 at the end of January, so it's been 16 years almost to the date. So we lived in a small Central Asian country called Kyrgyzstan for the first almost 7 years, and for the last 10 years or so, we've been serving in Thailand. So I'm a medical doctor by training, so some of the work that I do is medical, and I work with refugees, as I mentioned, but for the last 3 years, I also serve as Asia Regional Coordinator for our organization, which is called Serve Globally. So that is providing leadership for missionaries in 12 different Asian countries, and it also allows us to interface with a lot of the national church movements in those countries. My wife is a counselor by training, and she is the executive director of a counseling center in Chiang Mai called Cornerstone Counseling Foundation. And it's a counseling center that serves missionaries from throughout Asia. So anywhere between Turkey and the Middle East all the way to East Asia, missionaries who are struggling, as was mentioned here, in their marriage, struggling with depression, anxiety, they come to this place to find wholeness and healing. Missionaries are just like you and me. They're very much broken people. So there is a huge need for the ministry of counseling. So that's basic introduction. But let's see. Let's do this. Let's pray first, and then we'll jump right in. Father, thank you. Thank you that you love the world. Thank you that you became one of us to die on the cross. And that is why we're all here this evening. Father, we thank you that you are the only hope for the world. And even now, your spirit is moving in the far corners of the globe, reconciling people to yourself. So that is what we want to testify to tonight, even with all the testimonies that were shared this evening. We want to testify to your work of salvation to the ends of the earth. So may your word that goes out tonight not return empty to you, but accomplish its purpose, O Lord. And that is our prayer this evening. Open up our hearts, help us to be attentive, help us to be receptive to the word that you have for us today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I don't know about you, but as I get older, I feel like so much of my theology and my spirituality and maybe even my missiology it's so much up here. It's gotten so complicated that I think this season of my life, there's really a desire in me to just kind of bring things back to the basics, to kind of deconstruct my faith in a sense and really bring it down to kind of the foundational elements. And some of you here who have some gray hairs may remember back in the early 1990, I think, there was an author by the name of Robert Fulghum who wrote a book. And this book was titled, All I Really Needed to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten. Maybe some of you remember this book, but the book's premise was that all the basic skills I needed for life as a grown-up, you already learned in kindergarten. So, for example, some of the points that he shares is share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your mess, say sorry when you hurt someone, wash your hands, flush the toilet, live a balanced life, learn some, draw some, paint some, sing and dance, play and work every day some. Simple things, right? So true. But after 17 years of living overseas, I've discovered that missions is very much similar. And all that I really needed to know about missions, I already learned in Sunday school. For example, God loves the world. Jesus loves you and has a wonderful plan for you. Trust and obey God. God is a missionary God. We are weak, but he is strong. Jesus loves the little children. This is basically what mission is about. And for tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday as well, I just want to share some of these simple principles that I've learned about mission. And tonight, I want to just talk to you about this issue of trusting and obeying God and having faith and really stepping out into that place of faith. Very simple thing, but it's so foundational to our living out and practicing of mission. As I was listening to the testimonies being shared tonight, and even with the Thailand medical team from New Life that came out just 3 weeks ago, this principle of living out mission. How do I express this? Mission is really, I think we as a church, we as a society, as a Christians, we tend to dichotomize mission. It's something that you do when you're called to do. But mission is really about our own formation. You can't separate it from our discipleship. And really, when we participate in mission, as whether it's short-term or long-term or whatever form that may be, it's about you in many ways. It's about your growth. It's about you discovering a deeper aspect of God's character as we participate in mission. But here's the mystery. Here's the amazing thing, is as we participate in mission, in all our brokenness, in all our sin, our frailties, all our insecurities, God somehow uses that to accomplish the task of reaching the lost. And that is the secret to mission. You don't have to spend 17 years overseas to learn that. I'm telling you right now, mission is about our own formation. So some of the things that I want to share with you tonight and tomorrow night is about that. It's about participating in God's mission and for us being changed in the process of doing that. And tonight I want to do this by looking at an Old Testament passage in Judges chapter 6. So if you have your Bibles, please feel free to turn to it. If not, that's okay. I'll just go through it. It's a passage that you learn in Sunday school. It's a story of Gideon, the judge. And I think there's so much truth to be learned in this passage. And I love Gideon because he's just a normal dude. He's just like you and me in all his insecurities and anxieties. But God calls him out, and he does a great thing through him. So Judges chapter 6. Let me read this. I want to read from verse 6 through 16. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock in their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. But you have not listened to me. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hands of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." As I said, Gideon is somebody that I can really identify with because he's reluctant, he's afraid, he's imperfect. But ultimately, he follows the course of obedience. And, this is a time in Israel's history where Moses has died. He never got to enter the promised land, and Moses is long forgotten. And Joshua has taken his place, but Joshua, after living 110 years, he passes away. And Israel goes into the promised land, but these great leaders like Moses and Joshua are a generation removed. They're forgotten. And Israel kind of forget their roots. They forget God, and they start sinning in the eyes of the Lord. So God, in his great compassion, he raises up judges, does he not, to rescue Israel from their sin. And here we find Gideon is one of them. And, again, he's just a normal guy, and it's during a time when Israel is ravaged by the eastern peoples. The Amalekites, the Midianites, they invade. And it says they so oppress, so ravage the land that the people of Israel are hiding in the mountains. They're hiding in caves. They're hiding in strongholds. And this is where we find Gideon. He is hiding in a wine press, threshing wheat. And, a wine press back in those days is just like a big circular depression in the ground, carved out of rock or, lined with stone. And he's in there in the wine press, in this, just kind of looking out, and he's scared and is threshing wheat. And it is here in this wine press that he has this encounter. It's almost like a confrontation with God. And God calls him out from that wine press to do something greater, to deliver the Israelites from the eastern peoples. You see, I believe God calls everyone to something. And I believe God calls everyone out of your own metaphorical wine presses. And to me, the wine press represents kind of the straight life. You know how, you do life, whether you're a student or you have a family, married. It's just kind of the straight life where, you're comfortable and you're just kind of grinding it out. There isn't much happening. Just like Gideon, he's just grinding it out. He's threshing wheat. And God appears and he calls him out to something greater. So my first question to you tonight is, what is a wine press of life or life situation that you find yourself in and that God is calling you out of? And what is the purpose for which he is calling you out of? Let me tell you a little bit about my own wine press. I feel like David shared most of my testimony already, so maybe I'll skip some of that. But I indeed was born in Korea. And I don't think, if I look at my family tree, I don't think there was a single Christian there. My parents are from North Korea. And generations back, I don't know of any Christians. Growing up, we were kind of a Buddhist/Confucianist family. And in fact, when I was born, I'm the only son. My mom was so happy that she took me to a Buddhist monk, and the Buddhist monk is the one who gave me my name. And in case you're wondering, he did not name me Bob, okay? That he didn't do that. He gave me my Korean name, which is Pumyeon. And Bob is a name that I gave to myself when we moved to the United States, thinking it's a 3-letter palindrome. It's very symmetric, very easy to spell, very easy to say. That's why I picked it. But the irony is, living overseas in Kyrgyzstan and in Thailand now, they make fun of my name. They just like the way it sounds. They're like, Bob. Bob, ha 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 ha, Bob. So it's ironic that I gave myself this name not to be made fun of, but now they're making fun of me. But, this is back in the late 1960s, early 1970s in Korea. It wasn't a great place to live. So my parents sought a way out, and one of the escapes was moving to South America. So my parents moved to Brazil. And back in those days, a lot of South American countries had liberalized their immigration laws. So there were a lot of Chinese, Korean, and Japanese immigrants were heading to South America, and specifically Brazil. So our family landed in Brazil, and as God would have it, as it happens with most immigrants, you go to some place and you look for other immigrants from your country, and you typically go to church. So that's what my parents did. They started attending, a Korean-Brazilian church. And that's where they heard the gospel, and they came to Christ. And that's, as a Sunday school kid, that's where I went, and I received the gospel as well. But it also happens that this Korean Brazilian church that I was attending was a very missions-minded church. So every month on a Wednesday service, they would invite a missionary that they supported, usually from Brazil or other parts of South America. And they would come and share their testimonies, just like I'm sharing tonight. And I don't know what it was. I was about 8 years old at the time. I remember, I couldn't even tell you what they shared or who they were, but I remember sitting in the front row as a little kid and just being captivated by their stories. And it was then that I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to be a missionary. Now, I wish I could say that as an 8-year-old kid, I went on missions and started serving, but it took a long time. Eventually, my parents moved to the U.S., and that's when I began schooling, high school and college. And it was during college that I met my wife, Grace. And it was a very spiritual experience because I met her at her father's church, and it was during a missions prayer meeting at that. And I specifically remember because we were broken into small groups, and our small group, she was sitting next to me, we were assigned to pray for Japan. And as I was bending over to pray, our hands accidentally touched. And time stopped. It was a magical moment, and that's how we met. Now, she has no recollection of this event, but I remember. So I started kind of trying to court her, and it turns out she wanted nothing to do with missions. Not at all. Okay, she thought missionaries are homey, that they lived out of clothes from barrels, and just they're super spiritual people. She had nothing to do, but I begged her, no. God started doing a work in her life, and during college, she took a short-term missions trip. So it's very true. You go on a short-term missions trip to meet your future spouse. But she went on a short-term missions trip to China, and God really changed her heart. And whereas I was called to be a missionary at a young age, she still wouldn't say, even now, I don't think she would say that she's called, but she would say that God brought her to a place of saying, it doesn't matter whether it's overseas, whether it's here, whatever door you want me to walk through, I will obey. I will trust you. So, and then we started dating, and naturally, since I wanted to be a missionary, that's how we ended up overseas. So we got married, and I went through residency and training, and eventually I went into a practice in the suburbs of Chicago, and that's where I went into my wine press. I kind of hit the straight life. Things were comfortable. In some ways, I was living out the Asian American dream of, having a medical practice, having a big house. We were even part of a church plant in the Chicago area. So I was serving at church. And as I was getting more and more comfortable threshing wheat in that wine press, God came and reminded me of the commitment that I made as an 8-year-old kid. And he called me out. And I wish I could tell you that it was an easy decision. I just kind of gave everything up and went over, but it wasn't easy, nor was it expeditious. It was really difficult. There was a couple of reasons why it was so difficult. And by this time, there was nothing holding me back. I had paid back all my school debt. We didn't have any commitments. We were financially stable, so we could sell the house and leave. But there were two things holding me back. One is my 3 little kids at the time. And this is that's my family back. Boy, did I age. My kids were 8, 6, and 2 at the time. Is a loss of control. Because I'm a control freak. Just giving everything up, whether it's my job or career, the kids. It's just, I just couldn't get over the fact that I'm just totally losing control. I was financially stable, but now I'm going to have to beg churches for money so we can go overseas. So, all of this was swirling within me, and it came to a head when we actually decided to go. So we sold the house, and, I had to quit my job. But I came to a place where I actually had to type in a resignation letter and turn it in to my department chairperson. And then one morning, so I made an appointment to go see him to explain what I was doing and hand in this resignation letter. And I remember I was standing outside of his office, and this was all coming to a head. This is it. This is it. For some reason, this act of turning in my resignation was becoming the focal point. It was becoming a defining moment. And I was shaking, and I was thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? Because I was just filled with fear and anxiety about kids, about everything. There was one other thing that was really bothering me, and one is my department chairperson was my mentor. He actually, mentored me during residency after I was finished with residency. He got me just probably the best practice I could ever get. And he really thought highly of me. And, part of me was anxious and scared and a little bit ashamed. Like, what would he think of me if I went in there and I said, I'm going to give up everything you gave me to go Central Asia, to do whatever. And I was a little bit embarrassed, to be honest with you. While this was all going through my mind, the secretary calls me in, and I'm forced into his office. So I just kind of gathered my thoughts, and I gave him the resignation letter, and I kind of explained what I was doing. And I was just steeling myself for what was to come. And then the most unexpected, amazing thing happened. You know what happened is I saw tears in his eye. And he started literally weeping in front of me. And you know what he said to me? He said, Bob, I'm so proud of you. I've always wanted to do something like this, but I never had the courage. He's not a believer. At that moment, it was just like, I just so sensed God's presence and God's voice telling me, Bob, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. This is a picture of our family now. And after 17 years of, my oldest got married last summer. So that's where that picture is from. And after 17 years of hindsight, yeah, it is okay. It is okay. It's better than okay. My kids are only slightly damaged. And for sure they will need therapy. There's no question about that. But they got to see the world and what God is doing in this world that they would have never gotten to see if I didn't walk through those doors. They've seen poverty. They've gained skills like independence, being on their own, dependence on God. And they've had opportunities that they would have never had if I did not walk through those doors. This is about trust and obedience. Unless you step through that threshold, from here on the other side of trust and obedience, you will never experience the blessing, God's goodness that He has for you on the other side. When my wife Grace went on the short-term trip to China, she learned about Betty Scott Stam. And Betty Scott Stam was a martyr. She was a missionary to China, and she was eventually martyred there. And there's a prayer written out. It's Betty Scott Stam's prayer that she wrote on the back of her Bible. And it goes something like this. Lord, I give up all my own plans and purposes, all my own desires and hopes, and accept thy will for my life. I give myself, my life, my all, utterly to thee, to be thine forever. Fill me and seal me with thy Holy Spirit. Use me as thou wilt. Work out thy whole will in my life at any cost, now and forever. Prayer of trust and obedience. So my first question to you today was, what is your wine press? What life situation are you in? And what is God calling you out for? He is calling you out of that for something. It could be something really small, as perhaps leading a house church, or going on a short-term mission. Or it could be something greater than that, maybe becoming a long-term missionary. But God is calling you to something greater. What is the wine press? As we examine the life of Gideon, he experiences a number of obstacles to obedience, doesn't he? I mean, for those of you who know the story well, and for those of you who don't, I encourage you to read on chapter 7 and chapter 8 as well, because the story goes on. God asked Gideon to deliver his people, the Israelites, from the hands of the Midianites and the Amalekites and all eastern peoples that were impossible to count. What obstacles does Gideon face? If you look at verse 15, Gideon says, "But Lord, my clan is the weakest, and I'm the least in my family." Okay? Gideon faces inadequacy as an obstacle. And do you remember what he does after the angel appears to him? God asks him to tear down the pole, Asherah pole, to Baal, but he does it at night because he's afraid. Do you remember the famous story with the woolen fleece? You know how the dew is on the fleece and not on the ground, and vice versa? Gideon tests God. He is afraid. He's fearful. So he asks God for a sign. And do you also remember, as you lead on, how God whittles his army? Do you remember Gideon originally brings 32,000 men, but God cuts that down to like 10,000. And from that 10,000, he only takes 300 to defeat this army that's too numerous to count. So he deals with weakness, inadequacy, fear, weakness. And I wonder if that is some of the things that you face, some of the challenges you face in your own journey as well, in your own journey of being called out of the wine press. But the point is that God often calls us to something bigger than ourselves, seemingly beyond our ability, so that through our step of faith and obedience, we see and we experience God's power and God's blessing. There's a letting go that's necessary. Again, imagine this threshold. On this side of the threshold, you just don't know. You've got to go to the other side to experience all that God has in plan for you. The gentleman in the sweater on the far left, his name is Andre Peters. And Andre Peters is child of World War II German prisoners of war that were taken by the Russians. And he is a well-known name in Kyrgyzstan because he is kind of the father of the Kyrgyz church. After World War II, Stalin took all these German prisoners of war, and as a form of punishment, he shipped them off to these remote parts of the Soviet Union. And some of these German prisoners of war were resettled in Central Asia. And Andre Peters, he's German-Russian. His parents were sent to Kyrgyzstan, where we served for 7 years. And Andre, because his parents were Christian, he was born into a Christian household. And later on, during his adulthood, he had this calling. Living in Kyrgyzstan, growing up in Kyrgyzstan, he felt a sense of calling, God's calling in his life, to reach out to the Kyrgyz. And at that point in history, in Kyrgyzstan, there were no known believers among the ethnic Kyrgyz. There were some Russian believers. Again, there were German expats that were there. But among the Kyrgyz, there was no known church. And Andre felt that God was calling him. And he just felt a strong burden. So he grew up in the capital, Bishkek, but later on, he decided to move to a town called Naden. Naden is a town where we serve. It's up in the mountains. It's about 90 miles from the Chinese border. And the people that live there are ethnically very Kyrgyz. They speak Kyrgyz. They don't speak Russian. And so he moved his family, his 3 kids, to the small town of Naden, up in the mountains, about 7,200 feet up in up in the mountains, and he started serving. Now, Kyrgyzstan is about 90% Muslim. And Andre and his family stuck out like sore thumbs in this town because not only were they not Muslim, but they were the only non-Kyrgyz that are there. So his family began to be persecuted. In fact, the Muslims were so opposed to him that they would come and throw rocks at his house. And they broke all the windows. And, because of the altitude, Nadan is very cold. And during the winters, he had to endure the freezing weather because all his windows were busted out. And his children also experienced persecution. They would come home from school, and Andre would notice footprints on their backs because kids were beat up and kicked, and they would have footprints. That's the kind of ministry, that kind of place, and the difficulties that he endured. And that's where he ministered. About 3 years of tolerating this kind of persecution, of being alone, experiencing loneliness and isolation, persecution. Not a single person had come to Christ. Not a single person. And here he was. He thought he was called. And in this incredible act of obedience, he went. But nothing was happening. So one day in the evening, he just had it. He just couldn't take it anymore. For himself, for his family. So he went up to a haystack that was in the back of his house. And he just started crying out in a loud voice, crying out to God. God, I obeyed you. I trusted you. Why is nothing happening? Why are you doing this to me? As he was crying out, he felt this overwhelming sense of God's presence, that God was speaking to him. And he knew that he needed to persevere. He needed to continue to serve and hang on. During this time, as Andre was struggling, he lived next door to a widow. And this widow had seven children. And, in Kyrgyzstan, like in many places, if you're a widow, you really can't work the land, you really can't do anything. And all of her children were little, so she really couldn't support herself. And one of the difficult things for her was, there's no, indoor plumbing, there's no water, so she had to walk about a mile to a hand pump to get her water. And as you can imagine, for 7 kids, this was a very difficult thing to do. So, she would do this, but one day she came home and she noticed that her bucket for the water was already full. She thought, okay, maybe one of our kids went to it. Okay. So the next day she woke up, went out to the thing to get water, and her bucket was already full. And she thought, okay, somebody's obviously, maybe one of the kids are getting up to do this. But this kept on happening day after day, day after day. And one day she just decided, who is doing this? Because every time she would get up, her water, buckets were already full. So she woke up really early in the morning to try to figure out who did this. And as she was kind of standing in the back of her house seeing who did this, and she sees Andre Peters drawing water for her, coming in and filling her buckets. And you know what? That widow and her family became the first Christians of the Kyrgyz church, first ethnic Kyrgyz to come to Christ. And that was the genesis of a church that has grown all throughout this country of Kyrgyzstan. Trust and obey. Unless you come to a place of being able to yield, being able to place your obedience, place your trust in God, and taking that step of obedience, you can't experience the blessing that God has for you. I believe we are all created to bring God glory. And one of the best definitions I've heard about glorifying God is manifesting God's presence here on earth. When you give God glory, you're manifesting God's presence here on earth. So we are asked to give God glory, and we are asked to be obedient to that call. For some of us, that call may be the same as Gideon, in taking small steps of faith to develop trust and obeying in small ways. Maybe asking for a sign, asking for the wool and fleece, and allowing God to show himself trustworthy. Perhaps it'll take that for you to obey. For others, it may take maybe radical steps of obedience. Maybe God is calling you something greater here at New Life or beyond. But the point is this: to obey is better than sacrifice, right? It's not about how big the step is, but rather that we obey. And the rest is really up to God. In fact, I believe the degree of our sacrifice, what we need to give up in submission to his will, matters less to God, because God knows the blessings and the power that he can give in its place is so much greater. You know, sometimes I feel like, man, God, I hope you appreciate what I'm doing for you. You know, like giving up my career, my family, do all this, but you know, that is such foolishness. Because what I have gained in the things that I've given up, so much more. But again, until you step out in obedience, you will never know what's on the other side of the threshold. In fact, you know, as I get older, we talk about sacrifice, we talk about obedience, but, you know, again, this is only recently that I'm realizing maybe what God is really looking for us is surrender. Maybe surrender is a better word. It's kind of yielding to God's goodness. It's giving up our willfulness to God's power. And I think surrender is a little bit different from obedience, because I think you can obey without surrendering, but you can't surrender without obeying. Does that make sense? So I wonder if God is really, surrender is a word that we should seek after. I want to close with one last story. And it's actually a story about David Livingstone. One of my idols, because he was a physician and missionary to Africa. And there's a story about David Livingstone. You know, he was a missionary to the interior of Africa. So back in the 1800s, mid-1800s, most of the mission work going on in Africa was along the coasts. Just because it was easier. I mean, you can, take a boat there, evangelize the coastal cities. But nobody had truly gone into the interior, central part of Africa with the gospel. And that's what David Livingstone was trying to do. He wanted to find the path. He wanted to find the route to the heart of Africa and bring the gospel there. But obviously it wasn't easy. He struggled, and he went there numerous times. During his second missionary journey, he just disappeared for 2 years, not to be heard from. And that's where you hear the famous story about Henry Morton Stanley going to look for him. And when he finds him, he says, Dr. Livingstone, I presume. That's where the famous saying comes from. But David Livingstone really gave up a lot. In his struggle to find this path into the heart of Africa, he lost his wife to malaria. And David Livingstone himself was struggling with chronic dysentery. He got malaria as well. And by the time, towards the end of his second missionary journey there, he was so weak. And he was just at his rope's end. Again, he had this chronic dysentery, and he was suffering fevers. He was wasting to nothing. But he was pressing on. He really wanted to get to the heart of Africa, to the interior of Africa. Because his health was so poor, one of the things that David Livingstone had that was kind of his lifeline, one thing that really held on to, is he had a small goat, a milk goat. And because the water was making him so sick, what he would do is drink the goat's milk. And that was a saving grace. It was drinking the goat's milk so his dysentery wouldn't be so bad. So he really treasured and valued this goat. In the process of heading into the heart of Africa, he was well on his way. In his way, there was this great tribe great village ruled by a great chief. And for him to gain access to the interior of Africa, he had to get through this village and this chief. So his entourage, his porters, his translators, and his goat was entering into this village, and he didn't know what to expect. He just knew that the village was ruled by a great chief. And as he was entering into this village, his translators went ahead and, was trying to talk to the villagers and talk to the chief, and then they came back, and they said, yes, the village chief will give you access into his village. But this village, this tribe, has a special custom. Whenever newcomers go into this village, you have to come before the chief and gain his approval. And one of the things that they make you do, or you need to do, is all the visitors must lay out all of their possessions before the chief. And the chief gets to look at everything and pick one thing. And that's a tribute to him. That is the only way you can gain access to this village. So David Livingston thinks, fine, okay, let's do this. So they go, they come before the chief, and they begin laying out all their possessions before the chief. And the chief starts coming and going around and looking at the things. And David Livingston, he's in the back, he's thinking, oh God, please, not the goat. Anything except the goat. Because that was his lifeline, right? The goat's milk. He just couldn't go on anymore. Well, guess what? The chief looks around. Guess what he picks? He picks the goat. And David Livingston, his heart just drops and he's crestfallen. He thinks, man, this is it. There's no way I'm going to enter the heart of Africa because of this. That goat was my only lifeline. And he's about to walk out, and then the chief comes up to him, and he gives him a long stick in its place. And David Livingston, like, I gave up the goat, and he's giving me a stick. But fine, he takes the stick, and he's, takes the rest of his crew, gathers up their things, and he's dejectedly walking down the road. And then one of his translators runs up to him and says, Dr. Livingston, do you know what that is you have in your hand? It's a stick. No, it's not. That's not an ordinary stick. That's the king's staff. And with that staff, that will give you access to all the villages in the central part of Africa. My question for you tonight is also, what is your goat? What are the goats that you're hanging on to that's preventing you from receiving God's staff? That will open the door to greater things God can do in your life. Let's close our eyes. As you close your eyes, I just want to give you some challenges. What are you holding on to that's hindering God's glory to be more fully revealed in your life? Is it too great a cost? Is it relationship, work, insecurity, reputation? Is it comfort? Is it being financially secure? Where do you need to make a choice to trust God and obey? Is fear keeping you from obeying Him? Ambrose Redmoon once said that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. What weaknesses do you see in yourself that you need to submit to God for Him to use and be glorified? Are you using those weaknesses as an excuse not to obey what He is asking? God wants to use broken vessels. He takes us as we are. Do we just not say that He wants us in weak places so that He can manifest His strength, so that He gets all the glory? We are all wounded healers, just like Jesus, the ultimate model of trust, obedience, and yes, surrender. I really do believe that everyone is called to something, whether it's something small or something big. However, all need to be faithful in obedience and stepping out in faith regardless of where you are, in school, in training, in work, serving in whatever capacity, to be faithful in being a manifestation of God's presence. God calls us to give him glory. How are we obeying that command? I know that there are some of you who are ready to obey to something that God may be calling you to. But like me, a huge obstacle may be inadequacy. You may feel that you're not ready spiritually, emotionally, financially, whatever. I want to argue that the fallacy of this is that likely you will never feel ready in your own eyes or even in the eyes of God. If we wait until we have faith to be obedient, we will never be obedient enough to have faith. If we will but step out and trust God, even in the smallest ways, with the most minor of obediences, we will discover that God really is loving. The things he asks us to do are the best things for us. He is sovereign, and he alone can order our circumstances to bring about what is best for us. So obedience is not burdensome if we are committed to the truths of God's goodness and sovereign purposes. Obedience instead flows out of love for God and leads us to greater intimacy with him. Think about this for a second. Have you ever regretted an act of obedience to God? And then think about this. Have you ever regretted an act of disobedience to God? I'll ask you one more time. What is your wine press? What greater work is God calling out for you to do? And lastly, what is your goat? What is that goat that you're hanging on to? Father, we thank you that Jesus was the ultimate model of sacrifice, of obedience, of surrender to you. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the work that was done through the cross so that we may have new life, that we may lead an act of obedience and trust and faith in you. Father, my prayer for everyone here at New Life is that they would gain a greater understanding of this truth, that they may be able to overcome their fears, their shortcomings, their anxieties, to discover your strength, your goodness, your care, and your love on the other side of that threshold of obedience. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, will you guys stand and join us in one last song? I need you.